Hello, Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, and welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! Business Casual. I'm your host, the RJB0. This is part 2 of my ARGCS analysis of the top 2 decks from today and yesterday's tournament. Today I'm going to, or this time I'm going to be looking at Bodin Temnyk, I believe is his name. His Brotherhood of the Fire Fist deck, also known as +1 Fire Fist, also known as Bear.deck. This is a pretty standard build, except it looks to me as if Bodin really engineered this deck for the mirror match, and I'm going to talk about that. And he's also really prepared for the mermail match, which it seems odd because he got 2-0'd in the finals. I mean, Patrick Hoban was really ready for this matchup, but I'll get to that when the time comes. So let's go down the monster list. The monster list for this deck is pretty standard across all the lists that are out there right now for this particular tournament. You've got the double card D, 1 Thunder King Ryo, double Veiler, triple Bear, 1 Gorilla, triple Wolfbark. It's pretty standard. I don't see a lot of deviance from what most of the decks are running. The 2 card D makes sense. Once again, 1 is tech, 2 is consistency, 3 is dependency. He's not dependent on card D, but it's definitely something that he wants to be able to draw into. He's got the 1 Thunder King Ryo, which is amazing in the mirror match. It's also good against spellbooks, which you saw a couple of times today, but not very often, so really mostly the mirror match. That double Veiler is protection against Lance, which is something that's been running around a lot today. You can see in this particular deck he's running the triple Lance, which makes, once again, a lot of sense, but I'll get to that in a second. Triple Bear is standard. 1 Gorilla is standard. You don't want to draw into multiple Gorillas. You really only need 1 per game for the most part, especially with the triple MST and the Gyoko in this deck. Gorilla isn't absolutely necessary. You've got the triple Wolfbark, which I don't really need to explain that. Let's get to the spell lineup for a second. Once again, some pretty standard stuff. The triple duality allows you to hit the Tanky or the Bear or the Wolfbark more quickly. The same goes for Upstart Goblin. There are just tons of cards in this deck devoted to drawing into things like Bear and Wolfbark. Then you have your triple MST, once again, makes a lot of sense for the mirror match, and also very usable against the mermail matchup. If you draw into them faster than your opponent draws their Abyss Spheres, which is actually highly likely since you've got not only the triple Upstart Goblin, but also the triple Duality, and of course the double card D. Just tons of deck thinning in this deck. Triple Lance, once again, really good for the mirror match. A lot of players were only running 2 of it today, and I think that was absolutely a mistake, and triple Forbidden Lance was the good choice. Remember how I said 1 is tech, 2 is consistency, 3 is dependency? In the mirror match, Forbidden Lance is essential. The reason being, your opponent's going to be using their bottomlesses, their D-prisons, their fiendish chains, their torrentials, their compulsories on your bears, and you really need that bear to go through, so you have to keep those Forbidden Lances available at all times, unless of course you have the MST, and your opponent only has 1 back row. You've got the 1 Gyoko and the 1 Tensu, once again something that can freeze your opponent's back row, and a Tensu can make big pushes later in the game and gain you some extra pluses, especially if you grab it off of Bear. Triple Tanky, no need to explain myself. Dark Hole is also really essential, in particular for taking on the mermail matchup. And the reason is because people started playing Leo, the Keeper of the Sacred Tree, today, this guy that you're looking at right now, and of course Abyss Gaios, which is a huge issue for this deck. Because if they put Abyss Gaios or Leo, the Keeper of the Sacred Tree on the board, that Bear isn't going to do you much good. But if you have the Dark Hole, it's an instant out for those cards and allows you to make those big pushes. It works against the mirror match too, mostly because they're just going to be putting big field presence on the board later game to try and push you to the end. And you're just going to want to have that Dark Hole handy. It's a really good card. A lot of people say it isn't, but I don't know. I think they're silly. Let's go into the trap lineup. We've got the 1 Warning, 1 Bottomless, double D-Prison. I really like Mirror Force personally, but if you're taking on the Mirror Match in this deck, or if you're taking on Mermails, Mirror Force is not going to be as good for you as Torrential. The reason being, in the mirror match, you're only going to see one monster or maybe two monsters at the most hitting the board. And most of the time, those monsters are going to be Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Bear. Let's be honest. Let's be straight up. It's going to be Bear. And if you deprison the bear, that wolf bark in their hand is dead. Whereas if you Mirror Force, they're just going to wolf bark the bear back, go into Tiger King, and get another bear off of that. So the deprison makes a lot of sense. Putting two of that over the two Mirror Force, he's only running the one Mirror Force, which is a good card, and I'm going to talk later about how to keep Mirror Force as a competitive card. But double deprison for the sake of space over the double Mirror Force makes sense, particularly for the mirror match. It also means that you're going to be more likely to draw into it versus your opponent's title or Dragasack in the Mermail matchup. Then you've got the Torrential Triple Fiendish Chain, once again very standard for the Fire Fist matchup today, or the Fire Fist deck. Triple Fiendish Chain does work really well against the Fire Fist matchup. One of the things he ran into against Patrick Hoban, though, is that Fiendish Chain isn't very good against the Mermail matchup. It's usable, yes, but it's going to get hit by Marksman. It's going to get MST'd, and especially if your opponent knows what your other back row is because you searched for it off of Bear or off of Tiger King. So Fiendish Chain isn't the best against the Mermail matchup, and I don't think this guy faced a lot of those until the final round. But he does have that Compulse, which is good against Mermails to get rid of Abyssgaius, and then of course the last Mirror Force for later in the game. Then in the side deck, you've got the double Maxi, once again, mirror match, or not mirror match, Mermail match. It's that other thing that starts with an M. Hieratics, just another way to draw into your outs quickly. Full House was something we were seeing pretty commonly today, and it's actually a really good card for this deck, because if you got like a Tenki and a Tensu or a Gyoko, you can pop three of your opponent's back row, which in the mirror match is pretty spectacularly good. And even if you can't, or even if you can't find two or three set cards on your opponent's side of the field, this is basically a one-for-one. If you've already gotten that search off of the Tenki, and you've already got the summon off of Tensu, if you use Full House, you aren't really losing those, but you can pop one of your own set back row and destroy two of your opponent's back row later in the game to go for a big push and ensure that that goes through, maybe to push a bear through or something of the like. Then you've got double Overworked. Once again, mirror match also works well against Constellars. And I cannot remember what the other thing is. I suppose it works against Boujins, but you weren't going to see a lot of problems with that. Of course, you have to run that Soul Drain. Triple Mind Crush was another really great card designed for the mirror match. Also good against Mermails, because if they reveal that Abyssgaius, you can just call Abyssgaius, drop it out of their hand. And any card that they happen to add from their deck to their hand, you can Mind Crush. Once again, mirror match mistake. The double mistake versus the triple Mind Crush, that was what really won him games against the mirror match, because you could hit that mistake, and your opponent could go minus off of their duality, off of their Tenki, but finally when they're going to actually begin adding cards to their hand, you can start swiping those out of their hand with something like Mind Crush. And you also get tons of information, and that's the biggest thing for Mind Crush, is getting information. And against the mirror match, that's huge, because you really need to know, does your opponent have Bear, do they have Veil, or do they have Wolfbark, and that makes you make smarter decisions than your opponent, because you're better informed. Then you've got the double Black Horn of Heaven, once again against the what's it called? Most of the rogue matches Black Horn of Heaven is going to be good against, but I'm talking specifically today about Hieratics when it comes to rogue matchups, and Black Horn of Heaven is big against Hieratics. Nobleman of Crossout, I suppose, is a way of getting rid of Abysslind. It works against Girgia if you run into that. I'm not sure why he would have run two as opposed to putting in something, I suppose, that would be better against like the Mermail matchup, which he seemed to struggle with in the first place. But, you know, c'est la vie. He's got the double Abyss Dweller in the extra deck, which is once again really good against Mermails. Daigosto Emerald is making a comeback, especially for this deck. If you can put like a Wolfbark and a Bear back in your deck and draw a card off of that, that's really good, especially in the late game in the mirror match. One Cardinal just makes sense. It's your TR Misu. Exciton Knight. The Giant Hand, I suppose, that works. It's a good card. I've never seen it used before, but that's because it's an extremely rare card. And then you've got the double Arc Knight, which is good against things like, well, it's just good in general. And then you've got Tiger Kings, which is pretty standard, Kagetsuchi and Crazy Box, which is good because he's going to be facing some Fire King matchups. And a lot of the Fire Fist decks that you're going to see in this format are going to be running Skill Drain because they don't really need their effects once they've got field presence. So that is Bodin Temnyk's deck in my feeble attempt at analyzing what his thought process was in making this deck. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you did, let me know why in the comment section below. And then, of course, subscribe for more decks, discussion, analysis, and general Yu-Gi-Oh! Shenanigans. Meanwhile, thank you guys for watching Yu-Gi-Oh! Business Casual. I'm your host, the RJB0, and I got a jet. See you guys.